she was again, doing what she'd always done. There were lots of reasons she did it, but truth be told, it made her feel good. And she wasn't proud of it. And she knew it was wrong. But it made her feel good. And if the man she was with didn't care that he had a wife, then why should she? And she knew the religious leaders at the time, the Pharisees, looked at her with disgust. But they talked about a God who was full of love. And they were nowhere near love. So why should she care? And honestly, there was an adrenaline rush. There was the secrecy behind it. And at the end of the day, it made her feel good. The Lord didn't make her feel good. And there was one particular day where she was with this man, doing what she'd always done. And she was laying in bed with him, and there was a commotion outside. And she didn't pay much attention to it until it kept getting louder and louder. Now, there was lots of times where there was lots of yelling outside, so it wasn't a big deal, but this was different. She started to get uneasy. And she got out of bed and went over to the window, and all of a sudden there was a loud bang. And the door came down. And a mob of people rushed in and grabbed her. And they pulled her outside and they threw her on the ground and began to beat her and yell at her. And as she lay there, they dragged her broken body all the way across town and dragged her up to the temple. Now there was a man standing there preaching at the front of the temple. And they dragged her body over to him and left her there. And she looked up at this man. And she'd never seen him before, but she felt like she had. And he looked down on her. And there was tons of yelling and arguing, but the man just looked at her. Calm, collected voice. And one of the highest religious leaders calmed the crowd down, and he walked forward and he said, "Teacher, we have caught this woman in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says that we are to stone her. The law that you say you follow, the law that the God that you say you are so intimate with wrote, that law says we are to stone her. Teacher, what do you say?" Now imagine for a second that we are this woman. We've lived this life of sin, but it hasn't really affected us, right? I mean, we're okay. And all of a sudden, a group of people who are supposed to be the light to the world come in and tell us what we're doing is not okay. They don't give you a reason for it. It's just pure hate. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm trying to put myself in the situation, I'd be pretty angry. Like, how are you going to tell me what I can or can't do? How are you going to say because of what you're doing and what you believe that I can't do something different? And it's a really interesting story because we don't know a lot about the woman. So there's a lot we can assume or unassume, but she did know the law, and she was probably very aware of what was going on. She knew what they were wanting to do. And so when she's brought forth to Jesus, and she's laid at his feet, and the idea of life or death are in his hands now, what's going through her head? What will be going through your head? Now, I'm in no way saying that anyone out here is an adulterer, but I think it's safe to say that we've all done stuff in life that we're not proud of. And we can probably say that Jesus wouldn't be proud of either. So how would Jesus view this sin? Now, I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with the end of this passage, but before we get to that, I would like to take our attention to see kind of how God does view sin and how this whole thing works together. So if you'd like to open your Bibles to the book of Amos, actually, today, we're going to start in Amos chapter 5, starting in verse 18. Amos 5, and verse 18, sorry, 5:18. Joel. This is a really intense passage. So just bear with me here. All right, Amos 5, verse 18. Woe to you who desire the day of the Lord. For what good is the day of the Lord to you? It will be darkness and not light. It will be as though a man fled from a lion and a bear met him. Or as though he went into the house, leaned his hand on the wall, and a serpent bit him. Is not the day of the Lord darkness and not light? Is it not very dark with no brightness in it? I despise your feast days, and I do not savor your sacred assemblies. Though you offer me burnt offerings and your grain offerings, I will not accept them. Nor will I regard your fat and peace offerings. Take away from me the noise of your songs, for I will not hear the melody of your stringed instruments. But let justice run down like water, and righteousness like a mighty stream. A little background information on this text.